Yeah. So I do. Honey, I forgot the duck.
Or I hope you vote for Republicans. He said that too.
So what do we?
Yeah, he said that as well.
He
probably got up. You did lie.
I didn't know what he said, but I also wasn't alive in '81. So
Yeah.
so I can't remember it.
Okay. All right. 2 more minutes. Sorry, 2-minute countdown has begun.
You weren't alive. You weren't alive.
I was alive.
Was anybody alive in '81? I was alive. I think I was not. Well, that's also true that I was. Boy, you guys now got some good weather from your now. February, this kind of yeah, huge. What do you hope to do?
Hong Kong.
If I just wanted to leave this guy here and record, allow record here,
Yeah.
I think there's no problem. I think. Or don't allow the record.
No state sponsored drinks that I've experienced.
So one thing we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of hide all of the cords. It looks amazing in the shot. So if I can kind of do that, and then we're going to move it this way so that we can tape it right here.
Go.
And hide it. Is that okay?
Oh yeah. No. Maybe I can.
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah, we need it in. I mean, I'm happy to tape it. I have some.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that should be good. Let me check the front. Yeah, where are you trying to connect that to?
Maybe I put the phone here.
Yeah, that should be fine. I'm gonna definitely tape up the cord a little bit though.
Yeah.
I don't want to remember trip on it if that's okay.
I just put the phone here.
Yeah, that should be okay.
You guys ready to get started?
Yes, sir.
Kick it? Neil, you ready? We're getting started. All right. Great. Matt, are you cool getting started? If Richie comes, he comes.
Yeah, we're like Richie and then he met over here.
They should.
Okay. Okay. Play by ear. I'll play jazz. So I also do. Everyone's gonna speak. Yeah. Come on. Okay, are we all set up here? Don't be shy. There's no shyness.
Come on in. Here, get
Yeah.
Don't hide yourselves. Don't hide your lantern under a bushel basket. Hey, come on up. Yeah, he's coming. He's on the way.
Okay.
Where's Francis? Do we have Francis?
Francis.
Where'd Francis go?
I'm right there.
Oh, Francis! We need Francis because she's speaking.
she's coming. Yeah,
Okay, perfect. You guys have what you need? You ready? Torian, what's up, man? Good to see you again. Double duty. All right. Well, thank you all for being here today. I'd like to begin with a quote. Our bodies are held captive, but our pursuit of freedom cannot be contained. Joshua Wong wrote these words from a prison cell in 2017, and he's back in a prison cell today. 2 years ago today, 47 Hong Kong citizens, including Joshua Wong, were charged for their alleged attempts to subvert state power under the Chinese Communist Party's national security law. A law drafted and imposed without any consultation, a law that threatens freedom still today. Now, the CCP claims this legislation is intended to protect, to keep Hong Kong safe. But in reality, it is a promise broken, a dismantling of the one country, two systems, a breach of China's international commitments, and yet another attempt by the Chinese Communist Party to shackle free minds. The 47 accused, well, what exactly did they do? They held a vote. They held a vote in an unofficial primary to pick candidates for Hong Kong's legislative elections. But for Beijing, this is already too much. In an authoritarian system like the CCP's, the only acceptable preferences are the state's preferences. All others, and those who hold them, have to be disappeared. The 47 include politicians, journalists, and academics. Some of their friends and fellow activists are here today with us, and we're going to hear their stories. If the 47 are given the maximum sentence available, all of them could die in jail. This is not the behavior of an open society. This is not the behavior of a state that believes in the dignity of human life. We've written a letter to Secretary of State Blinken imploring him to demand the release of the Hong Kong 47 and all political prisoners. We've also urged him to hold the Hong Kong government accountable for their actions, to include by revoking the privilege, exemptions, and immunities of the Hong Kong economic and trade offices in the United States. The Select Committee on the CCP is here today. We're here today, all of us are here today, to send a message to the CCP and prove Joshua Wong right, that you can hold the brave activists captive, but you cannot contain their pursuit of freedom. We cannot allow tyranny to advance, let alone succeed. The world is watching. Hong Kong matters. Hong Kong is not a decided question. Hong Kong's story is the story of millions around the world who are weary of oppression, yearning for freedom. Dignity, human rights, those aren't just American ideals. They are universal human hopes. Beijing's authoritarian vision does not stop at its borders. It does not stop at Hong Kong. A world in which people are free is a world unsafe for the CCP. So it's trying to change it. I want to end by talking about a little newspaper most Americans have never heard of. Apple Daily was a very unlikely symbol of freedom. It was a tabloid started by a garment businessman with a penchant for criticizing the mainland government. Everybody predicted that it would fail. But where larger, fancier papers sold their souls, that little tabloid grew to be the most important pro-democracy voice in Hong Kong. And why is that? Because it spoke the truth. This is the last copy of the newspaper from June 2021. That little tabloid that started in 1995, that was never supposed to amount to anything, well, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers started lining up in the middle of the night to buy the last issue. And by the morning, the newsstands were empty. They sold 1 million copies. So we are going to hang this copy in the offices of the Select Committee on the CCP. We want every guest, every witness, every journalist to see this issue when they walk in, to remind us all that if we could have just a small fraction of Jimmy Lai and the Hong Kong 47's courage in our work, we can move mountains. We will fight for freedom. We will stand with Hong Kong. And with that, it's my honor to introduce Francis Hui. She's been a Hong Kong democracy activist since she was a young teenager, and now she's with the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong. Francis, please join us.
Thank Congressman. Thank you for everyone to show up here today. I'm exceptionally honored and grateful that I get to speak here today, because for a very long time, Hong Kong has been seen as a lost cause in Washington and has been forgotten by the world largely. Today we're joined by people coming from all walks of lives, many of whom have worked tremendously in the field of China policy. Some of us came from the ground of Hong Kong, witnessing and participating in the movement in Hong Kong back in 2019. Some of us had to leave Hong Kong due to political persecutions, and some of us were personal friends of the 47 that are charged under the national security law. For whatever reasons that brought you here today, I believe there is one single thing that connects all of us here, as well as the people that are locked behind bars today in Hong Kong, which is the fact that we all believe China is a #1 threat to world's democracy and human rights, and that Hong Kong is absolutely an important part of that. I grew up in a Hong Kong where diversity of voices was allowed, I learned from school about freedom of speech and how the basic law is protecting all of that. 10 years ago, I saw students sitting on a hunger strike trying to overturn a national education scheme. And one of them, of course, as you guys know, is Joshua Wong. So at that time, I joined scholarism and I started my activism. I was 14 years old. We would protest in our school uniforms, climbing up and down in barricades and campaigning in the streets every single weekend. People would tell us, "You're too young, you shouldn't be here." And indeed, all of us would think that kids should be at school, hanging out and playing with their friends. But at least those are the days when young people get to stand up. This was the Hong Kong I was used to. In 2019, however, I saw students as young as 9 years old standing on the front line against the police. Right now, among the thousands of political prisoners in Hong Kong, over 100 of them are teenagers under 18 years old. Over 100, with sentences as long as 5 years. The youngest, 13 years old. May I just ask everyone to let that number sink in and imagine how much they could achieve in that period of time in their childhood instead of being locked behind bars. Earlier in the weekend, I was in a rally for Ukraine as we enter 1 year of Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I can't stop to think this is exactly the consequence of neglecting the CCP's attack on human rights and freedom. The Tiananmen Square massacre was a reminder of this consequence when we failed to stop Beijing from undermining the rights and freedom of its own people domestically. And so as the occupying of Tibet, the ethnic cleansing of Tibetans, then the Uyghur genocide, and then Hong Kong. Again and again, we enable CCP's violation of human rights and emboldened other actors around the globe like Russia to continue their own human rights violations. Every time we let authoritarians slide with their atrocities, we risk other bad actors attempting the same with their neighbors and jeopardizes the future of Taiwan. That is why it is important for us to hold CCP accountable for all their attempts to challenge world's democracy, whether it is the violation of human rights, to practice and export surveillance, the censorship of criticism, and the transnational repression. It is important for us to send a message to Beijing and the international community that there is no place in this world for violators of human rights like the CCP. Hong Kong is essentially a case study of what occurs when the US ignores human rights priorities in its quest to compete with CCP. We cannot tackle the threats of the CCP if Hong Kong is not taken as a critical part of the US strategy. And they should be carried out in tandem with other democracy-defending allies to broaden the efforts. Today, we mark the anniversary of the charging of the 47 activists in Hong Kong under the national security law, most of whom have been imprisoned for over 700 days. Their faces and 1,000 more political prisoners in Hong Kong signify tremendous courage and determination in standing up against the obstruction of of freedom in Hong Kong. Most importantly, they remind us of CCP's day-to-day crackdown on the people and the civic society of Hong Kong. Not only their faces should be remembered, but their names should be raised directly in diplomatic engagement with Chinese counterparts and essentially in the discussion of policy towards China. To wrap up my remarks, I would want to say Hong Kong should not be forgotten, ever. This is a challenge given to people both in Washington and the people of Hong Kong scattered around the world. It was never too young for me to start, and it's never too late for the US to step up its efforts to safeguard freedom in Hong Kong and to hold the CCP and Hong Kong authorities to account. In that regard, we're thrilled to see the recent development in US politicians and the creation of this select committee on CCP, which shows that American perspective on China is finally going to change. Therefore, we look forward to seeing the work of the committee led by Congressman Gallagher, and will be in full support of the committee in advancing US policy toward China. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well said. Well said. I commented that the weather was nice, and she said it's cold for a Hong Konger. I said it's very warm for a Wisconsinite. But I'd like to ask another committee member to speak, Dusty Johnson, and then we'll alternate between committee members and other people.
There are people, members of Congress, perhaps, who think that the Chinese Communist Party can coexist with freedom and democratic ideals. The experience in Hong Kong has shown us that that is not the case. There are people who want to take the Chinese Communist Party's word for it when they say they are open to one country, two systems. The experience in Hong Kong is proof that that is not true. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate talking to the folks from the Hong Kong Democracy Council who have shared with members of Congress about what a clear and present threat the Chinese Communist Party is, not just to people in Hong Kong, but to any freedom-loving person across this globe. A threat to freedom and democracy anywhere is a threat to freedom and democracy everywhere, and I want to thank both Raja and Mike, the chair and the ranking member of the Select Committee on China, because they are going together in a bipartisan way going to be elevating the decades, the pattern of aggression that the Chinese Communist Party has shown toward democracy and human rights. I want to thank you all for coming to tell your story today. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. And now I would like to introduce Sunny Cheung, who was a driving force behind legislation that was passed in the Trump administration, a Hong Kong democracy activist, and I believe there's an active warrant still out for your arrest, Sunny. So please join us at the stage here today. Appreciate it. You won't get arrested here.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for coming today and showing support for Hong Kong. I would like to first thank you, the committee, to host such a timely event regarding the Hong Kong 47. I'm also an elected candidate in the primary election along with the 47, but I'm lucky enough to flee Hong Kong and stand in front of you to talk about this case and the implication from Hong Kong. I stand before you today to talk about the issue that not only captures the attention of the world, but has serious implications to the United States and its values. This is not just a story about one city or one country. This is a story about the future of freedom and also the human rights globally. Against the backdrop of this mass arrest, there are actually three implications I would like to address. First of all, we should not easily believe CCP will conform with rules and orders. Xi Jinping is a strong believer of Machiavelli. They both emphasize the importance of power and the importance of achieving one's goal with all the necessary means, including unethical and immoral ones. In the case of 47, my friends are detained for more than 700 days. For now, and when asked, the prosecutor cannot even provide evidence after 700 days. What does that mean? It means if CCP is determined in love, they will by all means to erase the whole political opposition in Hong Kong. They even conducted espionage activities by sending spies to double-cross our political leaders and try to infiltrate our social movement and provide intel to the CCP. Therefore, we cannot trust an unreliable counterpart like China. The spy balloon crisis, the escalating cross-strait relation, and also the increasing control of CCP over international organizations. All this share the same story that they have the tendency to break the promise instead of promising it, destabilizing the status quo instead of protecting it. What happened in Hong Kong will happen on the American soil and everywhere right now. Secondly, Xi Jinping is building CCP supremacy in the region. In Hong Kong, my 47 friends and I were trying to run for office. We just had a very good chance to become a de facto majority in the institution. to decide, to determine the future of Hong Kong. However, CCP couldn't tolerate that. They arrested all the leaders in Hong Kong to prevent us from becoming the majority. Beijing claims that they embrace cooperation, they embrace competition. Instead, they actually opt for destruction, and also they opt for domination. Nothing is allowed to threaten their supremacy in the region. That is also why they prevent Taiwan to become a de facto state. This is why they deter the US presence in the Western Pacific. There is no popular or multipolar system for them. There is no win-win scenario for them. The only win they accept is a CCP victory. What happened in Hong Kong will sooner happen on American soil. The last implication is that Beijing needs to face consequences before it's too late. Many people have warned us the rise of CCP before, but not until the fall of Hong Kong, a cosmopolitan having more than 100,000 Americans living there, then people realize how aggressive CCP is. The international community failed to notice about the threat of CCP, and the United States is the only country that really sanctioned Hong Kong and Chinese officials trying to hold them accountable. However, this is not enough. CCP thinks that they actually win the battle over the Hong Kong. They are now promoting a new story of Hong Kong. How can we allow that? We need coordinated action to work with like-minded countries to deter the CCP aggression. Instead of reactive action, we need proactive and preemptive action before more people are arrested. We need to remind it's impossible for Beijing to walk away without consequences after dismantling Hong Kong civil society. At this very moment, my courageous friend, 47 friends of mine, are now behind the bar and now facing the trial. They are combating the most powerful and strongest autocratic regime in human history. Many of them chose not to plead guilty and are ready to debate with the authorities and expose its absurdity. It's not because they have the faith in the judicial system. It's not because they believe they can get away in the court without any charges. It's because they want to remind Beijing, you cannot walk away without consequences after dismantling Hong Kong. They represent the hope of Hong Kong, and I do believe the United States, a nation of liberty, should not abandon my friends. We should remember their sacrifices and all the lessons we learned from Hong Kong and be ready to defend the values we believe, whatever it takes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well said. Very well said. I wish everyone could hear that. Expert analysis of the CCP. And now, finally, unless Richie Torres or someone has showed up, I will introduce a Hong Kong activist who I've been fortunate enough to participate on a variety of Zoom calls with and has helped me understand what's going on, Joey Siu. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The United States have demonstrated its unwavering and bipartisan support to the people of Hong Kong, and also to supporting the values of freedom and democracy. And the Select Committee itself is a prime reflection of that. We thank you for organizing today's event in commemoration of our friends back in Hong Kong and for upholding our values of freedom, which we all believe in. Many of you might know me as a human rights activist who organized on-the-ground protests and also international advocacy efforts back in Hong Kong during our pro-democracy movement back in 2019. Some of you might also know that right before I went into exile, I was also the campaign manager to a dear friend of mine, Owen Chow, who is currently sitting behind bars and undergoing a 90-day national security law trial for a conspiracy to commit subversion, simply for participating in a civil society organized democratic primary elections back in 2020. I still remember so distinctly it was 2 years ago, after a long working day with meetings with different congressional officers explaining situations in Hong Kong, that I received a one-worded message from a former campaign staff. He said, "Arrested." Immediately I knew that Owen was arrested. But at that moment, what I did not know was that it was not just Owen. It was 47 of Hong Kong's most influential, most prominent pro-democracy leaders who were arrested. It was not just the more radical pro-democracy activists who advocated for Hong Kong independence or anything close to that. It was a wide range of pro-democracy leaders from such different generations and backgrounds. You see people like veteran journalist Claudia Mo, to renowned non-violent protest leaders like Joshua Wong to Lester Shen, and then to respected academics and legal professionals like Benny Tai. All of them became criminals overnight under the national security law. The CCP's intentions with the mass arrest cannot be more clear. They did not just want to silence the 47 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. They wanted to silence every single Hong Konger in Hong Kong who participated in the demonstrations, who thought about supporting the protesters in Hong Kong. They wanted to silence every dissident inside and beyond the soils of China, all across the world, even here on American soil. What we have been seeing is that with the national security law's extraterritorial reach, and with the Chinese Communist Party's ongoing, escalating transnational repression in the forms of secret police stations, community infiltration, online smear campaigns, or even physical harassment and attacks, none of us, even in exile, is safe. And with the recent spy balloon accident, we can see that the CCP's challenges to us, to the free world, is well beyond human rights. Under its national military civil fusion strategy, the CCP has been acquiring intellectual properties, key research, key information from researchers, scholars, private industries all across the world, to fulfill its aim of becoming the world's most powerful country in not just the economic or political spectrums, but also in terms of military and beyond. And from the stories of Hong Kongers, Tibetans, Uyghurs to Chinese dissidents, I can say that our communities are the canaries in the coal mine that well illustrated the Chinese Communist Party's endless ambitions and aggressions. And the free world cannot afford to ignore our plight. We hope to see a continuous bipartisan effort from the government, from the free world, to continue establishing, formulating an extensive, comprehensive whole-of-government approach, to head a strategic competition with the PRC, and also to continue advocating for and advocating with us until the release of every single one of our peers. And to conclude, I would like to share with you a quote from my friend Owen. He wrote this before his 90-day national security trial, which began earlier this month. Evil always wreaks more havoc when the forces of good have been weakened. So let us latch onto that and hold fast. I have no doubt that if they were to choose again, they would step up to fight for Hong Kong, to fight for the values that we believe in without any hesitation. And I believe that if we were to choose again, people like me and Sunny and so many among here who already went into exile would choose to do it for our friends again, without any doubt. So I ask everyone here today, and those who are watching from online, to continue standing with us, to continue to be that force of good, to continue to latch on that belief and our common values, and continue supporting Hong Kong. Thank you.
Well, with that, tonight at 7 p.m. in the Cannon Caucus Room, the Select Committee on the CCP is going to be holding its first hearing entitled The Chinese Communist Party Threat to America. What we're trying to convey to our colleagues and the American people is why they should pay attention to and care about the threat posed by the CCP. Why this is something that all Americans should be concerned about. Why this is not just an over there problem, it's a right here at home problem. And today, from those who have dealt directly with the threat, you've heard why. This is an important message that we on the committee are going to be carrying going forward. And so I want to thank all of my friends who are here today. I want to thank all of you for coming out to this event. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Sir.
If the Hong Kong government continue to violate the human rights, what kind of action we can take? doing business in Hong Kong? Do you think this is viable?
I think there's a variety of actions we can take that range from sort of the intellectual to the practical to the strategic. At an intellectual level, you heard today about the complete evisceration of the idea of one country, two systems. And in fact, having just spent 4 days in Taiwan, I was struck by how often what happened in Hong Kong was referenced by Taiwanese leaders to suggest that one country, two systems is now a fiction. So at an intellectual level, I think we have to digest that, such that even Xi Jinping's foremost advisor, Wang Huning, is now tasked with reformulating their propaganda with respect to how they sell the idea of one country, two systems to places like Taiwan and elsewhere. On a more practical level, what I've asked the Secretary of State to do in the letter that we've sent to him is simply to raise the case of the 47. Our diplomats should be demarching their counterparts in China about this issue every time there's a meeting. We should revoke, as I said in my speech, the status of the Hong Kong economic and trade facilities. More strategically, I think if you talk to many people in the audience here tonight, some form of immigration pathway for the persecuted from Hong Kong would be a sensible step and a strong signal we can send in solidarity to Hong Kong. We also have some legislation that we're looking at on the Select Committee right now. There's a Disclosure Act that's been talked about where businesses would have to disclose certain aspects of their presence in Hong Kong that I think would make sense, but we haven't yet endorsed it on the Select Committee. So I think there's a lot of things we can do. If nothing else, we can pressure the administration to not forget about Hong Kong. And anytime you have an American business that, like the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, is saying something silly, like praising the rule of law in Hong Kong, when obviously the rule of law has been undermined, if not destroyed, in Hong Kong, we need to be calling them out, as we recently did with a letter to the American Chamber in Hong Kong. So, no silver bullet solution, but there's a lot of things we can do. If anyone else has thoughts, you're welcome. Ideas? These are the real experts, so. Yes. I'm not surprised. What we're dealing with in the CCP is a bunch of bullies. The whole idea is to intimidate us, to instill fear in us, so that we back down. And they do it in a variety of means, right? Whether it's using economic coercion to instill fear in American businesses and threaten the loss of market access, whether it's incursions into Japan or Taiwanese ADAs. It's designed to instill fear. It's what President Tsai called cognitive warfare. Whether it's wolf warrior propaganda designed to get Americans to question that our values are worth fighting for and to give in to some of the worst propaganda that the CCP is spreading on American social media platforms. It's a bully tactic. It's the behavior of something that looks far more like the mafia than it does like a respectable state. And so this is something we're hoping to expose in the Select Committee on the CCP's work. Above all, we can't give in to that feeling of fear. We have to stand up for our sovereignty here in America. We have to stand up for our values here and abroad. And we have to stand with our friends in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, and all around the world where people are feeling that fear as a result of this coordinated campaign of transnational repression. Other questions? Going once? Going twice? You guys have anything else you want to add? Well, thank you all again for being here today, and please come to our hearing later tonight at 7 p.m. and look forward to following up with all of you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing this. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. Great words, everybody. My gosh. We need to transcribe everything and put it into an essay. Also, that's right. That's good. We can. So I can keep this, right? So we can display it. Is that right? Okay, good. I bent it. That's not good.
I heard that you guys already have a plan to put it.
Yeah, indeed. So, of course, yes, of course. Yeah. Okay. Should we get that capital in the background, or what's better? Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Are we doing a picture? Yes.
佢揸住張蘋果日報咁我同佢
Thank you.